because we did not have this event room done by then. And it was so well received, we decided to have him welcome Jeremy.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having folks. If you want, I'll just talk like this.
Yeah.
And if someone can't hear, I can move over to a microphone or something. I'll start like this. Like you said, my name is Jeremy McLaughlin. I'm from Fort Dodge. Been around. I've been doing this for 25 years now, so quite a while. Started pretty much right out of college, collecting, building up a collection. At that time, it was a different world. Internet wasn't what it is now. There was really no information out there whatsoever. I mean, you really had to go to the libraries and bust your butt to find information. Being from Fort Dodge, I knew it was Fort Dodge Pottery, and really that's about it. Didn't know anything else, and then got to talk to people, found out there's a few other ones. Kind of got into it, looked more into it. I could find parish ones when I come down here to the flea market, so I find parish in Fort Dodge, and everything else was a whole lot harder to find. Parish is just really unique, I think, compared to a lot. They all got their own unique thing about them. Parish not necessarily being a town, but a post office, parish post office. Kind of an odd way to mark your pieces and whatnot. As it had the Melchers down here, and the Becks, Shirley's. Ed was in Lowell, Ed was in Lowell, and then Dennis was in Danville, or what they would consider Lowell and Danville. So not quite in Lowell, not quite in Danville, but not the same place, different places, very close to one another. I'll start to give you guys a little information, but feel free to just ask questions at any time. Give some basic information, then I'll answer your guys' questions, because really that's what I'm here for, is to answer questions. Nothing from right around this area, though. I take it from around here. Okay. Let's see. Oh. Let's see. Dennis Melcher, where the art pottery came from Baden, Germany. Came over here from there. They settled near Burlington, in or near Burlington, in 1845. They found a deep vein of the finest blue clay in Baltimore Township of Henry County. This location was a short distance from the military road, which had been built in 1841. It linked Des Moines, Henry, and Van Buren and Wapello counties to the Indian Agency. This provided a means of transporting the wares out of the area. Close by near Cedar Creek was found a low grade of coal source that provided the fuel for the pottery kilns. The coal bed was provided a quality of gray shale, which mixed with the pure blue clay for a high quality of potter's clay. The clay would be fired at 2,200 degrees and produced highly glazed pieces. The clay was dug in the fall and piled in an open spot to weather over winter. In the spring, it worked to remove the impurities and run through the grinding process. The mixture was placed in an open pot or bin with thoroughly watered. When the water settled, the clay removed a little time as it needed by hand until the bubbles were removed. At that time, portions were cut off and thrown on the potter's wheel to create the desired piece. At their peak, they had 4 wheels in operation.
Show me anything how big they would have been.
Well, not very big.
Potter's wheel.
Yeah, potter's wheel being basically a seat and probably something about that size.
They would throw the.
They would make pieces right there. The employees at Melcher Pottery were paid 50 cents a day plus room and board. So they all kind of lived with one another, which you'll find out kind of leads to the pottery being related and whatnot. Dennis Melcher died in 1879 as a senior, and there's no evidence that his pottery ever operated after that. Edward came in 1845 and started his own pottery west of the Melcher pottery. So Edward would have been in Lowell, like I said, and Dennis was in Danville. So they're just west of each other. How many miles? Just
Quarter of a mile.
quarter of a mile. It wasn't far. And he was on Salem Road in an area called Parrish. Among Edwin Melcher's workers were German immigrant brothers, Eustachius and Antoine Beck. Again, love found its way, and the brothers were married to two of Edwin's daughters, Emma and Julia. When Edward retired in 1876, he rented this plant to the Beck brothers, who operated it until around 1904 or 1905. That's me, but them living together kind of isn't a common thing in the potteries where they would kind of marry into the families. Like, it probably wasn't designed that way, but when you're living under one roof with people, it's going to happen. So that's the Becks, that's the Melchers. And then Charles Manning Turley, there's really not much information about him. Basically, he worked in Baltimore Township. He moved near Danville in 1869 and purchased land not far from the Melchers. He set up a pottery shop there and wanted to use the same procedures as the Melchers. And he would run that until 1904, according to this. It sounds, the one thing about,
When you say blue clay, what is it called that because it was that?
not necessarily that color, but just a term for different clays have their own kind of term. I think it's more of a grayish color actually than blue.
Is that what all potters made from?
No, some are all different.
Okay.
It kind of means, just like brick
Okay.
is different with fire grades, there's different grades do different things.
An advantage of blue clay was it's
It's easier to use and whatnot.
Yeah.
So to mold and whatnot.
hard.
Dennis Melcher Jr. would go start, would he start or just work at as an officer for the Monmouth Pottery? But he worked there, and this is from a 1901 newspaper article, so they would go over there to work in Burlington, or not Burlington, at Monmouth. And here, the Turley brothers were talking about moving to start a pottery in 1901. It said they were in operations like 1904, 1905, but here in the newspaper article, it says that they were going to Burlington in 1901. They had closed down here and were heading to Burlington to open up a pottery there. That's kind of the tough thing sometimes. One paper will say one thing, one paper will say another, and it really can throw off the timelines and stuff. So that's why I said, this is what they say, this is what they say. According to this newspaper, in 1901, they were heading to Burlington and had closed down here. I'd asked Pat about this before when I first got here about Melchers, because she didn't know anything about it. And it mentions an A.R. Melcher had started a new pottery in Port Richmond in 1870. In Port Richmond, this was from the Atumwa newspaper, so I'm just assuming it was somewhere near Atumwa. But she didn't know about that one. So they certainly moved around the areas and stuff. And supposedly probably find a better clay or whatnot, or resources.
Was the town on the south side of the river at Tumble.
Oh, is it? Okay.
So it's probably been a port for it.
Yeah, yep. So, like I said, I wasn't sure. I'd never heard of that town, but at least there's one mention in the newspaper article about the guy at the Port Richmond, and that's it. So, just a few bits that really don't necessarily fit in with the rest, but this would be an A. Melcher from Louisville, Kentucky. And with me, I want the whole timeline of things, and I don't know that he worked at this pottery per se, but I assume there's some relation, came over, some went this way, some went that way kind of thing. So there were Melchers, at least down in Louisville, Kentucky as well, doing pottery. We got to talking about it, I was telling Pat about this piece I have. It's the only piece I've ever seen just marked Dennis Melcher, just a straight line Dennis Melcher, nothing else. He got it from southern Missouri. So you wonder, did it come from this plant? Did it come from, who knows where? Probably the same Dennis Melcher we're thinking, but just where he made it is uncertain. And again, it's the only stamp I've ever seen like this. It's like a water cooler, believe it or not. We'll stick it on here. Lots of warts on it. Good clear stamp on it. This is the only water cooler I've ever seen from them. Sure, there's been tons, but I mean, some people, they see that, gosh, throw it away. It's got a crack in the chip in it. And I think, well, keep it. Look at that thing. It's got warts,
Yeah, is that intentional or unintentional?
I'm sure it was probably one that's supposed to be thrown away.
I think it's natural to slip out of your hands.
But I like it. I thought it was neat. And I always find it kind of fascinating on stuff like this that would hold water. Like that in those jugs. Because I've got some like 5-gallon jugs. I can't imagine picking up those full of water. This I could use, but a 5-gallon, and then trying to drink from or pour from it. No wonder they got broken,
When these people went looking for clay, did they have to get land rights or permission from where?
I'm sure they owned the land, so they would probably go out and kind of scout. The way I took it is they kind of go out and scout an area looking for so I would use it from other potters. Like Martin White, when he moved from Cedar Falls to Fort Dodge, they talked about him trying to come into Fort Dodge, kind of looking for a good clay vein or whatever. So I suppose then they would seek out buying the land. And first you have to find the clay vein. Second, especially in Iowa, you have to find a way to move this stuff. Like, where can we move it? There's, I'll mention different towns too, but Coalport, Iowa, which is up in northeastern Iowa, or Colesburg. Coalport had a pottery too. Colesburg also had a pottery. Colesburg, they were like 7, 8, 9 miles from the railroad track. We think nothing of that now. That was a big deal back then. 7, 8, 9 miles, not on flat land, bumpy, hilly grounds. I think there were stories that this place up in Colesburg, I'll just make up a wild number, would make, let's say, 2,000 flower pots a day, in hopes that 1,000 would make it to market, because of the transportation issue. So that was a big issue. So water or railroad were the best sources to move. Obviously, a larger town. They talked in the newspaper articles that they did supply Mount Pleasant with a lot of pottery here, which makes sense. I suppose Burlington too. They were kind of a middle ground between the two, so they supplied Burlington, they supplied Mount Pleasant.
Who did they fire the kiln with?
Mostly wood, I would say. I mean, mostly going to be wood. Getting into the 2200 though, that's yeah. I know later they would, as the brick and tile kind of took over, they would have a fireman on watch. Because almost every pottery didn't close down for good reason. It closed down because fire took them out. And there wasn't an insurance company, so they didn't have the capital. You're out of business. Maybe there was one unlucky guy whose first attempt was started a fire. His whole inventory went up in flames. He's done. It's one of my favorite Dennis Melcher piece. There's any time you can get a design on them. Like I said, told Pat, and you got, 200-300 different crocks, and a lot of them are brown. It's kind of tough to tell which one's which, but when there's a design on it, at least I can be like, oh, I remember that flower, I remember that tornado, or whatever. So
How many times did he fire?
just once, I believe.
So they gave that on and fired once?
Yep. And I don't know about the stamping. I've always been curious about the stamping, like why they would stamp some, why they wouldn't stamp others. There's different theories on it. My theory would be something along the lines of, if they come to your shop, they know who they got. They're going to come to the pottery and get it, so maybe they didn't mark a lot of that stuff. But if you're going to take it to the county fairs or whatnot, you might want to stamp a few pieces because there's other guys in the area working too.
I noticed a 3 on there. Does that indicate?
Gallonage. Yep. That's a gallonage mark. Sometimes you can kind of identify some companies. I would never keep it just solely because of what's written, on it. I mean, to say, oh, that's from Parrish, I wouldn't say that for sure. But some of them are ornate enough, you can almost tell for sure, like, you know what, hey, that's probably made in Williamsburg, or that's probably made here, but I hate to always use that as a reference, but if you really like some kind of a name or a little bit more than just a number to verify it. Just a few other Dennis Melcher pieces. The difference between Dennis and someone asked me, how can you tell who made what? And I don't know why, but they seem to have been not the best stamp pieces most of the time. They're very hard to read. They're not crisp stamps. I mean, I get a few, but a lot of them I could barely read. But Dennis has got an old stamp on his. And that's why I separated Dennis from Edward and the Beck brothers, because they have almost like a rectangle and notched corners. Every corner's notched. So it's not a true rectangle. And a lot of times, I've only been able to identify it because of that little notched corner. And like, there's a few. Oh, this one. You can see the kind of the notched corner right there. And then if you do this little number and you get it in the right, just right, you can make out this Beck and this Pottery. It's the first clue, I guess, and then you start looking at it a little bit closer, and you can start to make out other pieces of it. But that's how you tell the difference between those three. Is Dennis is always an oval, Beck and Ed are the notched corner kind of rectangle, and maybe you won't know which one of them made it, but you'll know, okay, that's Parrish. It's either Ed or it's the Beck brothers. I would say in almost every pottery, from what I've read, the most common piece they made was bowls. They would call them like milk pans, was more of the term they would use. And I suppose, it's the thing that's getting used the most by most people. It's no wonder, I think jugs survived a lot because they probably didn't get used as much as maybe the other pieces. Your crocks, your canning jars and stuff probably got used a whole lot more. The bowls obviously got used a lot too. And I think that's why you see kind of less of them survive. It wasn't that they made less, it's just they're the ones that got used the most because they haven't survived. I mentioned Burlington. I don't know who started Burlington at all. I've got a little information about Burlington. And y'all are welcome. I got 2 books up here. Sorry, 3, but 2 of interest. And it's marked Iowa Stoneware Companies. And it's this one. And this is most of my collection. It is some other people's in some cases. Here, in this book, what I have for Burlington, is it was started by H.M. Turley, which I'm sure means C.M. Turley, but it was a typo. It is my guess. But they say it was started by H.M. Turley. So you can go through there. There's a lot of, especially down in Southeast Iowa, there's a lot of potteries down here. You have Bonaparte, you have Vernon. I was telling someone I've got a couple pieces. They're dated and marked from Washington, Iowa. Mount Hillier up there, Fairport. And there's so many down here. I've got a buddy, he's probably got the best Southeast Iowa collection. He's got ones I've never heard of. There's no mention of it. They're marked, where, it's mapped. So there's a lot down in Southeast Iowa. That's especially if you go just right up that Des Moines River. It just seems like they're just littered all over the place. Shirley, mentioned him. Just a bowl from Shirley, but I wanted to make sure I represented all the potters here. Standard bowl. He didn't use a square and he didn't use an oval. His was just Turley, Parrish, Iowa. Pretty simple. The funny thing about Parrish, funny story about Parrish is Dennis also is the only one that spells it differently. He spells it P-A-R-I-S-C-H. They spell it P-A-R-I-S-H. He added the C. This one, I don't know who made it. Well, they scratched parish into it. Over the last quite a handful of years, a gentleman showed me probably 2 or 4 different jugs that are scratched like that too. And they're stained. I don't know if it's back or Melcher, but he's got somewhere between 2 and 4 different jugs. I think they're all the same size. I think they're this size right here, in fact. And those be scratched all over here, Parish, Iowa, and maybe what company. But it's neat to see different things out there. This is another potter, and the only piece I know of from him, F.F. Melcher. Dated 1896 on the bottom, Parish, Iowa. The unique thing about this piece is it looks a little different than the rest, doesn't it? They were supposed to be out of business by this. This is zinc glaze. That was about all the time zinc glaze was coming into work, about 1896. Well, they were supposed to be closed down. So I don't know if maybe you could take this at Monmouth or somewhere else. And like a friend said, sometimes you write their name and where you're from, not necessarily that was made there. So it's kind of a mystery piece because of the glaze. That glaze wasn't supposed to be, they weren't supposed to be in business at that time. Well, Pat brought another thing from Albert Beck. And you can see it's very similar. I mean, obviously different shape, but they made different things. I mean, we always think of just the crocks, the jugs, the churns. They made lots of different things. There's a footed bowl. Only one I've seen. It's got 3 feet on it. Again, sometimes the odd thing about this is a molded piece as opposed to a hand-thrown piece. And I know that they were making these molded bowls over in Monmouth at one point, but that would be before Monmouth. But I guess a mold could. So you wonder, did the mold start here? Did they carry them over to Monmouth, or how did that work? So it's very interesting. This is the only piece I got. Marked Lowell, Iowa. I've seen about 2 or 3 different ones from Ed Melcher marked Lowell, Iowa, not Parish. So I was at a house and I saw this, and of course I had to ask like how much. And the guy thought it was crazy. He's like, "What do you mean? I don't have it." So here it is. I have it. I really enjoy finding these kind of ones. This is on the Parish ones. These are the ones I really like. I can find the brown crocks and stuff. In fact, I went to all your shops here today before I got here, and I saw one in every shop. I only bought one, but I just like. Other companies had this yellow and stuff in them too, but Parish seemed to get it more than others. It's something different. It just kind of sticks out from the rest. Mark Ed Melcher.
Is that from the clay?
Yeah, it'd be the minerals in it. A reaction to the minerals in the clay is what that is. I got this at the same time I got the water cooler. And if I didn't see that, I wouldn't think this was a Parish piece at all. I mean, it's got a big round top. That's not normal. The whole shape of it just doesn't seem normal. But it's more Ed Melcher, and he kind of got fancy with his choose on this one. So that was something kind of neat, and figured I better bring it back to Iowa and save it from Illinois, so brought it back on the good side of the river. Again, same thing, just that yellow again. Just something different. And like I said, down here, it seems to be, if I see the yellow one, I might look, and I hope for a mark on it. Churns, again, just something different than seeing just the same old thing. Churns. I've seen about 4 different kind of variations of stamps from Beck on the bottom of their bowls. If there was a mystery piece out there, there is one that's been kind of attributed to here or someone down here, and it just says Iowa. The thought is it came from down here somewhere, but we're not quite sure what just Iowa who made it. But this one obviously says Beck, and Parrish went out to sea. I referenced this one earlier just because of, a lot of times you're looking and if I can find those notched corners, I can at least narrow it down to it likely came here at the beginning. Like coloring, you put all the clues together and you say, you know what, hey, I may not know if it's Ed or if it's Beck, but I can read the PO in there from the post office. I can see the notched corners. It came from down here somewhere. Red colors again, just a neat little bowl. So they come in all different sizes. That's about the biggest one I have down there for size. Yeah, I'm sure there's bigger, but at least they made them down to this size. From that size to this size. It's more of that yellow from Beck Brothers. Just something
You're
different.
from Fort Dodge, we'll color this again if you were Fort Dodge.
Fort Dodge, really, I never see, I might have a few with this kind of yellow in it, but this is actually this is the one I purchased today. And if I was in Fort Dodge, up there, if I was buying with yellow, it'd be like one little blotch like this. It wouldn't be as heavy. I've got Eldora ones with the yellow in them too, but it seems, it's just crazy how many are get this color
So
down.
Fort Dodge are what color?
Mostly they're brown.
Brown.
But every now and then I'll get one with a yellow spot. I suppose a certain interval in there hit it and just, popped. Another one of those just kind of mystery pieces. I found this several years ago in a shop down in Walnut, Iowa. Smart back down here. Weird thing is, it must have a bit. I've never seen one of these complete. So this would be an interesting one, I think, to see a lid on it, what it was used for.
Sure.
Of course, to the other pieces, I'll tell you, after doing this for 25 years or so, I still find new information. I just found out on that Port Richmond thing recently, you find new pieces that maybe tie in or answer a question about another piece. This would be a prime example. You hope to find someday someone has one with Louisville, Kentucky, or Parrish, Iowa. This is a different stamp, but not where was it made? We don't know. Maybe, some other town we didn't even know he was working in, but every little piece, whether it's got a chip or a crack, I guess is another clue in the story and stuff. So they may have any questions or anything.
The Eastern Stoneware, oftentimes the manufacturer would put the name of his customer on it.
Okay.
The store, the merchandise.
Yeah.
But was any of that done? Have you ever seen that done here where they're selling 100 pieces of pottery to Joe's Market?
Yeah.
Okay. And they actually would put Joe's Market on there because he wanted the advertising. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up. Because,
Yeah.
One kind of section I missed. Thank you for asking. So this would be our earliest in Iowa. It's what we call salt glaze. Generally speaking, it's kind of a grayish color. The decoration on it sometimes or not, but that would be our earliest. Let's call it 1860s to 1880s. So we're in that range. Then it's brown. So let's go 1870s to 1890s. Yeah, there's overlap. They weren't all necessarily onto this. Around 1900, this was the glaze. White. You have any idea why they went to white from brown?
So they could write on them.
Well, first reason was sanitary. It means a lot easier to tell if something's clean on white as opposed to brown. But the other thing they could do is, like you said, now you can put stamps on them. So a lot of times they have these blue stamps. I don't know why blue. It's either blue or black. Well, I've never seen red or orange, but it's blue or black stamps most of the time. And they might, like you said, do 100 for this customer. And they'll say, like, Joe's Market, you know, Mount Pleasant, Iowa. You'll see little mini jugs sometimes. You see Crocs, not as many advertising as Western made, because after 1900, really there wasn't much left in Iowa. The last company going in Iowa, manufacturing on a large scale, was Fort Dodge. They would have a few with advertising on it. And Fort Dodge only went to about 1905, give or take a little bit. Marshalltown was in business around that time too, but I don't think they were making near the amount. I've just seen some kind of run-of-the-mill stuff from Marshalltown, but they're the only companies I know of that were making this color in a large quantity. So yes, that's a good question. But yeah, that's when they switch to this, it allowed them a chance to stamp them. Can't really do that on brown and see it from across the room, you know, the advertised look.
One with Pottery and Western, and then of course Red Wing in Minnesota, they just seem like they became big industrial operations.
Yeah.
And so they're producing in large quantities,
Very large.
efficiencies of scale, and probably drove a lot of these guys out of business, right?
Well, what happened was, I think the 1880s were the heyday of Stoneware in Iowa, and I can't remember the exact number. And I think the number actually references, when it says clay, it's referenced on brick and tile, everything. And this number, so it's a bit skewed. I think there was like 290 some operations up and going. And by like 1900, I think, of that, there was like 3 still making pottery. So just between 1880 and 1900, there was a sharp cutoff. Glass had really come in, and glass was cheaper and stuff. And so that came in. Then the big companies kind of came in and started doing their thing. Marshalltown, just after 1900, without my information on me, I can't tell you when, I want to say 1901, 1902, they had come in and they were going to be the big thing. And so they built this new machinery. It's supposed to take all the impurities out of clay. And I'll tell you what, if you find a Marshalltown crock that isn't cracked, consider yourself lucky. So I suppose clay is no different than if anybody goes hunting and they, gets a deer, you got to get some fat in there to hold it all together. Well, without any of those impurities, I guess nothing held these things together. And they're just, every one of them, so big old cracks down on stuff, and I suppose it's just the lack of impurities in it that wasn't holding them together. But that's why you see so much Red Wing and Western out there too, is it was all after 1900. This stuff was all pre-1900. So you also got any questions?
So the one you had your hand on, and the dark brown one, were the